Welcome, Christina Mautz. Christina is the CMO and head of sales at Moz. And I am really excited to have you here. Moz is, I think, a household name. Everybody probably has heard of it, at least in the industry. And Christina's been at the company for over 3 years and has also been a marketing executive at Amazon and Yahoo, as well as a few Seattle VC-backed SaaS startups where she actually earned the nickname of Chief Problem Solver. That's something I'm going to ask you about for sure. To give a little background on Moz, Moz was founded in 2004, has about 170 people, is based out of Seattle, Washington, with offices also in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Cork, Ireland. And on the funding side, they have raised Series C, $29.1 million total. Background story on Moz. And I actually told my husband earlier, I'm like, I'm so excited Moz is going to be on the show. And he said, he's an engineer. And he said, who's Moz? And I was like, what? You don't know? Like, who are you? You don't know Rand Fishkin? Who are you? So yeah, but he's an engineer, so I'll give him that. So Moz was started by Rand Fishkin and Gillian Muessig. And it is, what is it? It's a source of robust, reliable data with accessible training and easy to use software to help SEOs. At Moz, folks believe that there's a better way to do marketing, a more valuable way where customers are earned rather than bought. So let's start there. I'd love to ask you like that message, customers are earned rather than bought. For the folks that are listening on here, can you explain that? What does that mean?
Yeah, definitely. So I think for any marketer, because while we serve SEOs, we know that a lot of us are marketers who also do SEO. We don't all have that privilege of having somebody who just does our search engine optimization, right? So we have a choice when customers are trying to find us. It's ubiquitous now. They go to whatever device is closest to them. They type or talk into the search bar and they look for us. And whether that's Google or in some other search engine, you can buy search ads. AdWords is how we refer to them, right? Google sells AdWords, you can buy them. It is really challenging and increasingly so for small businesses trying to compete for some of those AdWords. They're very expensive, but that is a choice. So you can buy the top of the SERP, we call it, right? The search engine results page, show up so your customers can find you. We refer to that as buying a customer. Or you can earn your way to the top of the SERP. It's also hard. So I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not. It takes work. But by optimizing for search, that's what search engine optimization is, you can get higher and higher and higher in search engine results page. And in that way, you earn that attention that you're garnering from the customer.
Wonderful. Thanks for explaining that. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. I gave a very quick rundown on what Moz is. What did I miss? Like, did I miss anything around, like, why do you exist? Who are you for? Maybe get even more specific on like, who's a super fan of using Moz software and what problems do you help them solve?
Sure. So more than anything, Moz is known as a trusted authority. Right, we've been in this from the beginning. We were the first. We were a blog before we were a software platform. And so people associate SEO with Moz and Moz with SEO. We are great for people looking to learn, like anybody out there who's like, oh goodness, I've heard about SEO. I really need to learn more about that. We have the Beginner's Guide to SEO that we have had for years and years and years. That is where many SEOs start. And many marketers also who just need to understand, what is this thing that I'm supposed to know something about? It's free. We have a ton of free content on our site. We're very known for all of our content, and we have paid training and certifications as well. But at its heart, Moz is like our mission says it all. We are looking to simplify SEO through software education, and community. So we're known for, as I said, our content and training. We're also known for our community. We hold MozCon every year. We don't try to make a profit at it. It's just break even. We bring experts from all over the world to you now online. Of course, we used to always do it in person, but for the second year in a row, we do it online every summer. And it's all focused on learning. There are no pitches. It's not about promoting any products. We don't even promote our own products. It is so that we can exchange ideas and learn. That is a big part of why Moz is here. So if you're a marketer and you're looking to learn about SEO, Moz is the place you come. And then if you're looking to do SEO, we serve a huge audience. We have everything from mom and pops. Agencies tend to come to us in droves, very tiny, all the way up to huge global agencies. And they come to us because we have like very a strong reputation around data quality. You mentioned that. And SEO is very much a garbage in, garbage out, equation. If you don't have really great data, then you're going to sit there and try to look at how you're ranking on a SERP and et cetera, and what you can do about it. And if the data is not accurate or not fresh, that's the biggest thing, right? In SEO, agencies are often attracted because of our quality data. And the ability to do custom reports, white labeled, they can put their logo on it. It just makes it easier when they're interacting with clients. But the bottom line is that our platform is very easy to use. SEO is not an easy task. It's not an easy responsibility. It takes time and it takes a lot of work. And so you don't want to be using a platform that's really difficult and hard to understand. So that's part of our mission is to simplify SEO. And we work really hard to have a very simple interface in our product.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining that a bit more and like who's actually using you. And the problems that you solve. So let's talk about SEO a little bit right now. Their SEO, some folks in the marketing world are saying SEO is dead. Other people are saying SEO is not dead. It's just changing. And I think that it's true. It has changed over the last 10 years, right? You can't just write blog posts and expect to rank high in search because ranking in Google is hard, and especially for startups, right? Which is a lot of the folks that are listening in are startups. So they're thinking about like, how do I move a little bit faster? Like I want to reach my target audience through other channels, maybe social media. Like what's your advice in terms of SEO? How has it changed? And how can startups still leverage it and in an effective way?
So SEO is not dead. What's really funny is we hear that year after year. Oh, this year now SEO is dead, and it just isn't. SEO will not be dead until there are no search engines, and I can't imagine that happening. So SEO does change, and it changes very often. It's not just like a big annual change; it changes weekly, and that is one of the challenges that makes it really hard. SEO is not a set it and forget it thing. There are people who think, oh, I can just go in and clean up some, problems on my site, and then I'll look at it again next year. Unfortunately, that's just not the way it works because Google updates their algorithm constantly. A lot of updates are little finessing that they do or test. They're always testing new things. That's why when you as a consumer, type something into the Google search bar, sometimes you're like, oh, that's new. I haven't seen a result that looks like that before. And that's Google testing different ways to display results. Google is always optimizing the page. Obviously, they are also influenced by the fact that they own the paid channel. So they want you to buy ads. And so they will look, to how they can optimize the page to get you to buy an ad as well. But the bottom line is that SEO is the way you show up in search. So as a startup, I've worked for several startups. I've had tiny teams. I totally understand that you sometimes are making big trade-offs and you need to figure out, well, what's the most important? Social, definitely super important for reaching an audience, right? But I want to ask you, what's more valuable? Is it a like, or is it somebody actually clicking through to your website? where they can convert, assuming they can convert, or fill out a form to contact your sales, what it is, whatever it is that you are trying to drive the action on. The challenge with comparing channels is that they serve different purposes, in marketing. Saying like, should I do social versus SEO is like, well, should I send an email or should I work on my website? Right? You to a certain extent, you do have to do it all. And what you need to decide is, how can I do each marketing or work in each marketing area to the best of my ability while make room for the others? And you don't have to work in all of them. Like that's an exaggeration. But for a startup, I think SEO is critical, because that is where people start their journey when they are looking for a solution. They're looking for information. They're looking to learn. They're looking to compare. And we've even found in the last few years, as Google became more and more local first, I'm sure you all noticed it, right? Suddenly, years ago, there was no thing called a local pack, that side of the SERP that has the name and address and phone number. And now there's lots of other information, it includes reviews. That didn't exist several years ago. And so that's an example of how Google updated. And even physical companies that have a physical location now also need to be in search results, because if they are not paying attention to that, somebody might, be looking for coffee near me, right? And believe me, there's going to be a whole bunch of Starbucks that come up or whatever the other big, coffee chain is in your area, and which will be Starbucks along with something else. And if you're that really cool, super unique coffee shop with a little bookstore next door or whatever it is, you're going to be hidden and nobody's going to find you, because people look at on their phones when they're out, they look desktop when they're home, tablets or whatnot. It's just where people go. So you got to be there.
So then what's your advice for startups that have lean teams, but yeah, you do kind of have to do it all, but at the same time, prioritize and focus.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're saying
Mm-hmm.
SEO needs to be part of that focus, like what's your recommendation on the lean team within a startup? Like what do you need to start doing?
So depending on your business model, right? Are you a company, a SaaS platform that converts online? Are you a physical location and so forth? It would vary a bit. But I would suggest you, and depending on the number of people you have, but somebody who deeply understands SEO typically can do a decent job, even though it's not always in their toolkit to begin with. They can do a good job understanding AdWords. So I don't, even though I have said, yeah, you want to earn a customer versus buy a customer, the reality is that AdWords work really well with SEO. It can be tough to compete for some of those very expensive AdWords, but there are studies, data that shows that when you run them together, it's a 1 + 1 = 3 equation, because there are audiences that will not click on ads, but if they see an ad and they see that you're at the top of the SERP or within the first, 3, there's this sense of, oh, they must be a credible company. Like it impacts their opinion of your brand when you show up near the top in an ad plus organic. So I would say, look for somebody who has that skill set, who can maybe do your paid AdWords and your SEO. The other combination that sometimes you will find is if you have a good web developer who's building your website, optimizing your website, they sometimes have SEO experience. You can hire for that. The other combination is if you are running an inbound marketing strategy, which many of us at SaaS, Moz is a SaaS platform. So we have a huge content engine and we are always running inbound marketing. We call it our always on marketing. And somebody who's a really strong content marketer will understand SEO. Like that is just table stakes for that career these days. Writers don't always understand it. So you can require, if you use freelancers or you even hire writers, you can say, I require that you are, you can say SEO certified, which Moz offers a certification, but you don't have to go that far. It's up to you. Depends on, again, your business model. But I would say at least require that they know SEO. Shoot them a link to the free beginner's guide, right? There are, ways that they can learn and ramp up, because your content is going to be useless to you if nobody finds it. And the way they find it, it's through SEO. So those are the three areas that you can often combine roles, because I know with a lean team, people wear many hats.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown and some good examples. Thanks for sharing that. And I think there's something to be said around both B2C startups and B2B startups can benefit from this. And even more so, I think these days, one thing that I've noticed and that I believe in is that the journey from when you learn about a company and their product to when you decide to talk to a salesperson, a lot more of that is now with the buyer. Like they don't want to talk to the salesperson anymore. They just want it to be like a frictionless experience where just like leave me alone until I figure it out, and then when I'm ready to buy, I just like want to talk to somebody and then just do this. And I think that's going to be the trend. We're moving to more of like the B2B buyer is going to take ownership of that experience and not want to talk to sales until much later. Is that something that you have noticed or also have read up on?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and I would say it's not a trend that's coming, it's a trend that's here. And it's been here for quite some time. I think most of us, in marketing know that the customer journey is anything but linear. It really never has been. It's so convenient for us to say it fits into this nice little funnel. The reality is it doesn't. That funnel is very swirly and goes all over the place. And now what's happened is, because the internet has gotten so big and there's so much information, people will research before they buy. And they will research in a couple of ways. They will chat with friends, right? Word of mouth is still very, very important in marketing. They will look on social. So social is important. They will look at reviews. So reviews are incredibly important if you have that type of business that, reviews are written for. And they will look on search. And when they look on search, they're going to look both for your company, but also for that area. So they might not even, especially startups rarely have a lot of brand equity, right? Yet, people don't know your brand yet. And so you need to make sure you're showing up when they're looking for solutions. And it's not just B2B, it's B2C too. People will look for, my roof is leaking, or I found mold in my wall, all those home repair things, or food that they're interested in, recipes, pet issues, B2B, maybe it's a tool set or so forth. And so the content that you have helps educate them, and it also raises their awareness about your brand. And so that journey, it often, it still starts with that broad awareness. But what we also see is that as consumers go through the funnel, they might take actions that we years ago considered lower funnel actions, like a demo that they can do online. I'm with you there, right? They don't necessarily want to be talking to somebody. I'm one of those types of consumers. I like to just self-serve. They might read a case study so that they can identify with who is this company's customers and are they like me? Everybody thinks their problem is unique. And then when they read a case study that has a similar problem, they start thinking, wow, this company is unique because they can solve my unique problem. So knowing the types of questions your customers ask as they make that journey is really important. And I agree 100%. The journey it's not linear, and it pretty much always starts online now.
Yeah, and moves like further down online more so than it ever did, right? Before jumping
Yeah.
on the phone or meeting in person
Mhm.
with a salesperson. So, okay, let's jump to you being at Moz for about 3 years, right? 3 years ago, you joined. What stage was the company in with their marketing? I'm super curious. Like, what were you working on then? And
Mhm.
then we'll talk about like what your focus is right now, but what were the early days like?
When I joined, there had been for a couple of years a lack of continuity of leadership in marketing. And one aspect of that is that marketing had been decentralized for some time, which is not uncommon in some startups as they grow and start rolling out additional products, because we tend to be product focused in startups. So we have product marketing. And so we might have one or two marketers assigned to market one product, and then they roll out another one. And you don't want to lose focus on that product that's doing so well. And so instead of growing a marketing team, you just assign a couple other marketers to this other product. And what happens over time is you end up with this decentralized function, which is, it lacks efficiency, and it also can lack impact. Like, you can have a much greater impact when you start thinking more about portfolio management and managing your brand as one brand versus multiple. So at Moz, it had been re-centralized. So there was one team when I joined, but it hadn't been back together for long. It was a smaller team. There was a lack of organizational structure. There was an interim leader. And so when I came on, really the first thing I did, which I do at any company, any new job, I think we all do, is I just started working to get to know the team and get to know their talents and understand their passions. And, people, when they are in that sort of situation where there's been a lot of change, and the company just needs to keep the flywheel moving, people often get shoved into positions that they don't really like or may not even be good at. And so I first spent time assessing the talent. I then worked with our CEO on a talent program to grow the team the way I thought we needed to. I did let folks go, and that was so hard. They were good people and they did great work. They just weren't right for the roles. And especially as I redefined the marketing organizational structure, it became apparent to me that marketing had also been the team that gave people career opportunities, which is a wonderful, generous thing to do. But the problem is when your team is so small, you have got to get people who have the skills and experience in those roles. Moz is not a big company. My team is a decent size now that I've grown it, but we often have, one person or two people in each role. I have a channel owner for social. I have two channel owners for email, so even a company's been around a long time like Moz does not necessarily have a huge team. And so it became really apparent to me that the first thing I needed to do was just build that foundation, build the team, get the right organizational structure in place. And so that was task one. And I did have a bit of a fail, I would say, on the first org structure. I mean, that's another thing that I think when you come into a leadership role, it's very easy at first in a startup to say, oh, everybody just reports to me. And then as your team grows, that's just not efficient, and it doesn't give you the thinking time to be strategic. And so you have to start creating organizational structures. And I think it's just critical that you align with your CEO and deeply understand the business needs that you are going after, because marketing serves the business. So what are your objectives? And then you need to create an organizational structure to serve those objectives. So I worked on that. And like I said, had to iterate a bit, and that's normal too, right? You find an org structure, you think like, oh, I think this is going to work. And then you look for how it's working. And what I tend to look for is, are people in too many meetings? Is there wasted time? Do I see people getting frustrated with process? So some of it is org structure. Some of it is having those processes that help you move fast. There's also a myth, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I have to say this. There is a myth in startup land that processes are for big corporate companies. And if you create process, it's going to weigh you down. It takes too much time. That's red tape. That is just not true. When you do not have efficient processes in place, it takes you longer, and you end up repeating steps. You end up making mistakes. Creating process helps you. You just have to keep it very streamlined, and don't over-engineer your processes and only create a process for something that really needs a process. And so I worked a lot on, org structure and process, and I introduced the idea to the team of what I call always on marketing. So the team was very focused on what I would call one-off marketing, where we were doing a campaign and then doing another campaign. And that you do need to run campaigns, one after another, but the concept of always on marketing bubbles that up to a more strategic level. You understand what your objectives are. Those are aligned with your business metrics, right? And then what your measurable goals are for the marketing team. You define your KPIs, key performance indicators, so that you understand what you're trying to achieve with your campaigns, and those KPIs, successful achievement of your measurable goals, should meet your objectives. Like, people tend to think objectives and goals are the same, and they're not. And so your objectives are aligned with what the business is trying to do. Your goals are measuring your marketing work. And so I probably spent the whole first 12 months on that, getting that foundation built, and we started getting that flywheel moving again. And what's really interesting is when I came in, we were at a certain level, top of funnel achievement. And I was told even by the CEO, we think we've kind of capped out. We don't think we have a free trial funnel. And I was told, yeah, we think we're kind of hit our max on free trial. So don't worry about that. Just, worry down kind of further down the funnel. But when I did a funnel audit and I started looking at the market, I'm thinking, no way. There's just no way. It's your data is a gift to you. Analyze your data, understand the potential in your market, because I'll tell you, so I've been here 3 years, and within the first 18 months, by not agreeing with that assessment of the market, we have now almost doubled our top of funnel. We are just about, within another probably 3 months, we'll hit double top of funnel from when I joined.
What did you see in the data where you were like, no way, we have not hit the end of this train ride?
Yeah, there were a couple things that came together. So first, I did what I would call a light market sizing. I didn't go spend a 3-month project, right? Like, I just pulled proxies. We all pull proxies. For the SEO industry, there are not big reports that analyze exactly, how big the industry is. They do for SEO services. Those aren't even big industry reports, but there are more reports on the services, so those agencies that we serve. And everybody that I talked to when I joined Moz was like, well, we don't really know the size of the market because this is not applicable. This is services. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Those are our customers. Of course that's applicable. And so I used that data, and then I used some other data that was looking at our customer base, segmenting and understanding what the mix is between industries and company sizes. And then literally just looking at Department of Labor statistics. Okay, if we know that we're really big in a retail industry that has a company size of, say, 30 to 300, go and look at Department of Labor statistics. It's all free. And you can see how many of those institutions exist in the US. And now this is just US market size, and we are global, but I knew that North America tends to be the biggest market for marketing tech. So I knew if I could size approximate North America, I'd get a feel. Just doing a light swath like that, I remember sitting back thinking, there's no way. There's just no way. We don't have enough of the market share, and there aren't enough competitors at our scale, that offer the robust solution we do, for us to not have bigger market share. So it was, that was really what I looked at.
Thank you for sharing that. And, that it goes back to like, question everything, check for yourself. Don't take something as the truth until you check for yourself. Because what would have happened if you didn't do that, right? Like that light,
something else.
That's right. Okay. So what does your marketing team look like now? And I actually want to ask you, because you're both the CMO and the head of sales. Mm-hmm. Like, how does that work?
It works wonderfully, actually. It is, any marketing leader that is working with a sales leader, it's just, more collaboration you have to do. So it's actually so efficient to have marketing and sales in the same team, I have found. My team is organized into, I have a growth team. The growth team is focused very much on top of funnel. They are a very campaign-oriented team, so they're working with content, inbound marketing, and then other tactics that we use that are very broad, like events and so forth. We have multiple products, so we have different marketing strategies for our different products. Then I have a retention team. The retention team includes product marketing and it includes customer marketing. So this is the team that's making sure that our customers, after they've gone through their free trial, they're now paying customers, they're educated on how to use our product, because we do have a very comprehensive platform. We know it can be a lot, and if people don't get the most value out of it, sometimes they don't realize the value in it, right? And so we do a lot of emails with very quick, easy to consume educational content. That team also launches all of our new features, products, and so forth. They launch our new training certifications, and they also do any customer communications around things like new metrics in the market, stuff like that. And then I have a corporate marketing team that's actually new this year. I didn't feel the need for it earlier. I did PR and AR, that's public relations and analyst relations. I just did that myself because I felt the need to staff up in growth and retention first. Corporate marketing, now that we've got, I call it the flywheel. So I've got the flywheel running for growth, got the flywheel running really well for retention. So now corporate marketing, I have hired a director there and have moved my content team under corporate. And so corporate marketing, people mistake that sometimes for thinking it's just marketing in a big corporation. It's actually just those things that are for your brand, right? And so making sure that your brand awareness is staying high, making sure that the messages in market are the messages you want market. Moz is very fortunate that we get mentioned in media all the time, but we still do public relations because we want to control the message in media. We want to make sure that people are hearing about our new products and so forth. And so that, and thought leadership. In our industry, it's really important that we are always studying and learning and publishing free content for our customers to learn with us. So we have a search science team, and my team works with that team to develop original research, and then we publish it. So that's all under corporate marketing. And then I have my design team. We have an art director and 2 visual designers. They do everything. So when you're hiring a designer, hire somebody who's got mean skills. You want somebody who can do your web design, who can do ad design, who can do, email headers and blog images and so forth. And so we've got this kick-ass design team. They even skinned the platform for our virtual MozCon. When we had to go virtual in this last couple of years, they even do that. They've got great skills. And then I have the sales team. And I forgot to mention that on the growth team, that's where my website team sits. So I have a website manager. I've got 2 web developers. So that was also fairly recent that we moved the web developers from engineering over onto my team, because web developers are marketers, like at heart. They really are marketers, and it just works so much better. It's just easier having them on our team. And obviously SEO, our SEO manager also sits on our growth team. So then the sales team. Yeah.
So I want to ask about the SEO person, like so much pressure, right? I mean, come on, like what is that? That's definitely, everyone's like, you're sitting in a meeting and you're going to look at the SEO person and say, so how's it going? I can only imagine, but like, I'm sure that you're probably drinking the same juice, right? That that you've built. You're using your software internally. This SEO person is very well versed in the software and is probably kicking butt, right? You tell me, like how's that channel going for you?
Oh God, we have awesome. I mean, just write in, like something like SEO or Learn SEO or something like that, and you'll see our beginner's guide probably pops first. It typically does. Our competitors watch. It's really fun on social. It's a relatively small world, right? And so we know all of our competitors, and there's really wonderful, talented people there too. And so we will be playful on social. They try to bump us out, and we're like, oh yeah, we just do, we do a little SEO magic, and boom, within hours we're back up again. I mean, it's kind of fun. But our SEO manager is fantastic. What she enjoys at Moz that you probably don't get at other companies is that widespread, there's so much knowledge about SEO at our company. I require my entire team, sales and marketing, to go through and get certified, because we offer certification on both. We have one course that's called SEO Essentials. And so that's just the basics of SEO. Everyone on my team has to go through that. And then there's tech SEO, which, for like web developers, website managers, really understand what you can do on a website. And I have my whole team go through it, because that way that SEO manager isn't solely responsible. All of us are kind of looking out for things that might look strange. So even at Moz, we will wake up and log on and say, whoa, what happened to our traffic overnight? Because Google pushed an update and something went weird, and we dig into it. Our SEO manager on the marketing team is fortunate because she can always go to our search science team and say, guys, I've been looking at this and I can't figure it out. Can you help me? And so we have a pool of resources.
Fascinating. That's so cool. Okay, what about sales? So how you head up that team, and you said like it's fine if you have both a CMO and your, the chief sales officer. You could have that. You just need a lot of collaboration. But for you, like, what does that mean in terms of your workload and your oversight, and what do you need to be good at?
That's a really good question. So this is the first job that I've been at, or first company that I've been at, where I have managed with marketing and sales. And it started just because the CEO needed somebody to manage sales when our previous head of sales left. And so I remember actually talking to Sarah, my CEO, and saying, well, okay, I'll take it on as like a consulting project, because we were having some issues, and chief problem solver. So I said, I'll come in, I'll assess, I'll make some recommendations, I'll manage it for the 3 to 6 months it takes us to get us, revise the sales approach to make our sales were just not, and this is on the enterprise side, right? Because we do self-service, people sign up self-service because we're a SaaS company, but on the enterprise side, you need to talk to a salesperson. You have to sign contracts, go through procurement, things like that. And our sales cycles were way too long, and we just were not being efficient enough. And so I said I would do that. And I got in there and, and did the work, and worked with our director of sales, who's amazing. I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful director of sales. And I loved it. I didn't realize how much I would love it. And I didn't realize how valuable it would be for me to bring the director of sales into I have a weekly leads meeting with all my directors, and to have that voice at the table, that voice of customer, and also that voice of the internal customer, because marketing does support sales. That's one aspect of my growth team, right? They drive leads into sales. And so it became easier and more efficient. And even beyond that, it became more creative, because you have a new voice at the table with a different background. So I find that it's working really well. On my time personally, I had to learn. I had never managed sales. I am fortunate that I've worked side by side with some amazing sales leaders over the years. I never understood the myth that marketing and sales don't get along, because if I want to be honest about my age, 30 years, career in marketing, I've always gotten along with sales. So I don't get that. And everybody I talk to gets along with sales, but it still is something I didn't know firsthand. I've never been a salesperson. So I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of listening to podcasts, and watching videos, and talking to my sales team, and asking them questions. And I was also very upfront with them about the fact that I didn't have this experience, and I wanted to be open and honest with them about that. I didn't want them to think I was pretending. And opening that dialogue, it took more time. I had to make space for that, and yet it was the right thing to do. And then after about 6 months, my CEO came to me. She's like, yeah, I'm going to make this permanent. And she thought she was going to have to sell me on it, because I had been very much like, oh, I don't think so. And yet I was loving it. And so I'm like, yeah, make it permanent. I'm good.
That's so exciting. And also, I don't hear about this often. I think this is rare. And I think that it takes a special kind of person to be able to manage both. So that is really cool that you've been able to try it out, and it actually is something that you've done well.
Can I add something here? It's a bit controversial, but I think it needs to be said.
Yes.
In my experience at other companies, when marketing and sales are put together, because they are sometimes on the same team, they are typically put under a sales leader. And I know this will not be a popular thing to say because I love my salespeople, but I have suffered in that position. And not because the sales leaders aren't amazing people who are talented people, but salespeople tend to have the experience of selling. And their idea of marketing is drive leads to sales or give me collateral, enable my team, right? They don't know all of the rest of marketing because they don't have to. Why should they? And so what happens is in that scenario, there's a overemphasis on supporting sales, and then the rest of the business gets throttled. The rest of the business of marketing gets throttled. And so I'm a strong proponent for, if you want to combine and have only one executive over sales and marketing, consider making it a marketing person. It is somebody who needs a broad range of experience, somebody who is, especially if you're SaaS, somebody who's marketed both enterprise so they can drive those leads into sales, but also SMBs, or like in our situation, our self-service revenue, which is most of our revenue, is not necessarily SMB. It actually goes the gamut. We have huge enterprises who choose to self-serve. Self-serve is just a purchase channel. It is not a definition of a customer segment. So, so it does take, probably a more experienced marketing leader, but I just think you benefit more from that broad experience of a marketing leader, because marketing people are all about deeply knowing the customer and understanding the journey. That's the only way they do their work. Sales knows the end of the funnel because that's the way they're really good at that. So yes, so I would advocate for marketing owning sales versus sales owning marketing.
And that is why I have you on this show, because it's the Modern Startup Marketing Podcast, right? I knew you were going to bring in a gold nugget like this and you can, right? Because you have the experience in order to say, I have actually done it and here's why it is effective. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up. I did want to ask you, how does this process of like marketing supporting sales with leads? There's been a lot of talk around what is a lead, and is a marketing qualified lead actually qualified? Like, how do you do this process within your company in an effective way where it's not just, marketing pushing all these leads to sales and sales saying, these are not good leads, take them back?
Yeah. Really great question. So rather than talk specifically about how it's done at Moz right now, what I'd like to say is, just as a startup, as any company, you need to very clearly define what is a marketing qualified lead. What are the criteria that makes a lead marketing qualified? And then what happens to a marketing qualified lead? Marketing qualified leads are not sales qualified leads. They are leads that have shown some top of funnel interest. I would actually add back up. They've shown top of funnel awareness, maybe awareness of your brand, awareness that they have a problem. So they're consuming some sort of content or whatnot, or they attended an event. That doesn't mean that they're ready to buy your product. And if you send a lead too early into sales, all that happens is your sales cycle gets longer. Your sales team becomes frustrated because they're talking to a lot of people who are not ready to talk to a salesperson, often don't want to talk to a salesperson. And so it is very fair for sales to push back on those leads. And that is what causes the challenges, I think, between marketing and sales, is that conflict over what's a qualified lead. At Moz, we did a lot of work, my director of growth, working with my director of sales, and I participated, but honestly, I'm very fortunate. I have a great team and my leads are amazing. And so they really drove this work, and they took each stage and said, okay, what's a marketing qualified lead? What's the criteria there? And then what happens? Okay, at that stage, we put them into nurtures. We put those leads into email nurtures where we are warming them. We are introducing them to more content. We're introducing them more to the idea that it is an always on program, SEO being an always on program, something that you don't set and forget it. And we're making sure that they are along with that ride. We watch their open rates, we watch their click-through rates and so forth. And then there is a trigger. So what is the trigger that takes a marketing qualified lead over to what we call a sales ready lead? We have the triggers defined for our business. You needed to define those for yours. Our triggers are different for our different product lines. So that is the other thing, is not every product has the same customer journey. So you really need to understand, what it is for your different product lines. And then what we do is we send sales ready leads over to sales. And then we have another stage when sales takes that lead and starts working on it. There's an automatic stage change in Salesforce. We use Salesforce as our CRM. As soon as they start working on that lead, it becomes what we call a sales accepted lead. So instead of there being just one stage marketing qualified or two stage marketing qualified and sales ready, there are three. And sales accepted means, sales is saying this one's ready. I'm working it. I'm taking it in. I'm creating an opportunity. And by clearly defining those stages, it gives us more data. So you'll hear me talk about data a lot. We can understand what the conversion rate is from traffic to marketing qualified lead, from marketing qualified lead to sales ready, from sales ready to sales accepted, from sales accepted to an opportunity created, from an opportunity created to an opportunity closed. And those stages, if you watch the conversion rates and you start optimizing every conversion rate, then when something goes off and you suddenly see your sales closed rate is really off or sales accepted rate is really off, then you can go back and be like, wow, what happened? We somehow got a batch of leads in here that triggered, they hit a trigger that we thought was sales ready, but they don't appear to be because they're not closing at the same rate. Your sales team, once they are mature, like sales teams have to ramp, but once they're ramped, and it's different at every company, totally depends on the complexity of your sales process, they will have a very steady close rate. It is atypical for a sales team to not be achieving, a sales steady, pretty decent close rate. Even during COVID, my sales team, Q2 2020, when the whole world was going, my sales team still hit like 88% of quota. Now that was unusual for them. They didn't hit 100 or higher, but 88%, pretty darn good when the whole world started freezing, saying, I can't do anything because I don't know what's happening with this, right? And so that was a good indication to me that they were staying productive, engaged, that the leads were still strong, and so forth. So that is how I define the lead flow. And I don't think my definition is that different than, industry norms.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned is something that is probably on average like used, but what makes this process, and I know we don't have much time left because I could talk all day with you. You've got so much great nuggets and wisdom, but what makes this process work for you? Like, why does this work? I imagine that you used to have like longer sales cycles before, right? With enterprise especially, and now I imagine that they're shorter. So what impacted that?
I think there's a couple things. One is that sales and marketing sit together. And so having my director of growth working with my director of sales, not as you need to partner with the other team, but you guys are on the same team. You share goals. They are reviewed and their performance is rated based on the same goals. And so when you share those goals and you work together and you get to know each other, you respect each other, it makes it easier to have the open and honest conversations. At Moz, we have a culture that is, we call it TAG FEE. It's an acronym and each letter stands for something. And the T is for transparency. And so we have these open, direct, honest conversations. And so for, sales director has every right to say like, hey, my close rate of my team is off. And I think it's these leads. These last batch of leads are not as good as the previous. And for the director of growth, that needs to own that and say, let me look into it. It goes the other way. The director of growth can say, I am sending over really highly qualified leads to you, and I'm not seeing them followed up on fast enough. Can you tell me what's going on? But instead of the accusation of you guys are not working hard enough or whatever, it's the question, can you tell me what's going on? And respecting each other enough to ask those questions, I think makes a big difference.
This has been fascinating. I love the perspective that you bring, given your oversight over those two teams. So I think that is going to be a clear, like, gold nugget in this episode. If anybody wants to reach Christina, she's on LinkedIn, Christina Mautz. And to find out more about Moz, you can go to moz.com. And I just realized that Mautz and Moz, very similar sound.
Yeah, when I introduce myself.
Coincidence? I don't know about that. Thank you so much, Christina. Thanks for being on here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.